I was standing in the kitchen, already dressed in my best blazer, when my mother walked in holding a cup of coffee and said the words that changed everything. "You're not going to that interview today, Isabella. Your brother needs you at his launch event. Family comes first." I froze, with my hand on the car keys. My father was sitting at the table behind her, scrolling through his phone like this wasn't a big deal. My younger brother, Lucas, was leaning against the counter, smirking. Welcome back to Polite Revenge Stories. Quiet stories about ordinary people who stop apologizing for taking up space. If you've ever been forced to sacrifice your future so your family could keep propping up your sibling, this one's for you. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. My name is Isabella Torres, and this is the story of how my parents made me miss the most important job interview of my life because of my brother's event, and how, years later, he ended up reporting directly to me. I had been preparing for this interview for almost 3 months. It was for a senior project manager position at a growing tech company in Phoenix. The role came with a significant salary increase, better benefits, and most importantly, real respect. After years of being treated like the responsible but invisible daughter, this was supposed to be my turning point. I'd researched the company, practiced every possible question, and even bought a new outfit I couldn't really afford. For the first time in years, I felt like something good might finally happen for me. But my brother Lucas had other plans. 2 weeks earlier, Lucas had announced that he was launching his own tech startup. It was mostly an app idea he had come up with after watching a few YouTube videos. My parents treated it like he was building the next Apple. They threw money at it, hosted dinners for his investors, and talked about it nonstop. On the morning of my interview, Lucas decided he wanted a big launch party at a rented venue. He wanted the whole family there for photos and support. When I told my parents I had an interview that same afternoon, my mother looked at me like I had said something ridiculous. "Isabella, this is important for Lucas. He's finally doing something with his life. You can always find another job. This is his big moment." I tried to reason with them. "Mom, this interview could change everything for me. I've been preparing for months. Can't I just come to the party after?" My father finally looked up from his phone. "Your brother asked for the whole family to be there. Don't make this difficult, Isabella. You're always so selfish when it comes to Lucas." Lucas grinned from the counter. "Yeah, Bella, stop being dramatic. It's just one interview. You'll get another one." I felt something crack inside my chest. I had spent years being the reliable one. I helped pay bills when money was tight. I took care of things around the house. I never asked for much. But whenever Lucas wanted something, suddenly family comes first became the rule, and it only ever applied to me. I looked at my mother. If I miss this interview, I might not get another chance like this for a long time. She sighed, like I was being difficult. "You'll be fine. Now go change out of that suit. We're leaving in an hour." I stood there for a few more seconds, hoping one of them would change their mind. No one did. So I went to my room, took off the blazer I had carefully chosen, and put on a simple dress for Lucas's event. I didn't cry. I just felt numb. That afternoon, while I was standing in a rented hall taking photos with my brother's team, my phone rang. It was the company I had interviewed with. I stepped outside to answer. The hiring manager sounded polite, but firm. "Hi, Isabella. We were really impressed with your application, but since you didn't show up for the interview and didn't call, we've moved forward with other candidates. We wish you the best." I stood there in the parking lot, phone pressed to my ear, while music and laughter from my brother's launch party spilled out from the building behind me. When I went back inside, Lucas was laughing with my parents, holding a drink and telling everyone how this was just the beginning. My mother saw me and smiled. See, everything worked out. Now come take a picture with your brother. I forced a smile and stood next to Lucas. But inside, something had shifted. For years, I had told myself that sacrificing for my family was the right thing to do, that being the good daughter would eventually be recognized. That day, I realized something painful. They would never choose me, not as long as Lucas was around. And if I wanted a different life, I was going to have to build it myself, even if it meant walking away from all of them. I don't remember much about the rest of Lucas's launch party. I smiled when people took photos. I helped serve drinks when one of the waiters was short-staffed. I even clapped when Lucas gave his short, nervous speech about changing the future of tech. But inside, I felt completely detached, like I was watching everything from behind a thick glass wall. Every time I looked at my parents, I felt something twist in my chest. My mother was beaming at Lucas like he had just cured cancer. My father kept introducing him to random people as the next big thing in tech. No one asked me how I was doing. No one noticed that I had been unusually quiet all evening. Around 9 p.m., I slipped out to the parking lot again and sat in my car for 20 minutes. I didn't cry. I just stared at the steering wheel, replaying the hiring manager's words in my head. Since you didn't show up for the interview and didn't call, we've moved forward with other candidates. We wish you the best. That sentence kept looping in my mind. I had worked so hard for that opportunity. I had stayed up late preparing. I even practiced my answers in the mirror. And for what? So I could stand in a rented hall taking photos for an app that probably wouldn't even exist in 6 months? When I finally went back inside, my mother pulled me aside near the dessert table. "You've been quiet all night," she said, lowering her voice. "Is everything okay?" I looked at her for a second. "I missed my interview," I said flatly. She waved her hand like it was nothing. "You'll get another one. There are always more jobs. Tonight was important for Lucas. He needed us here." I stared at her. "Mom, that interview could have changed my entire life. I've been trying to move up for years, and you made me miss it for a party?" My mother's expression hardened slightly. "Don't be dramatic, Isabella. Lucas is finally doing something with his life. You should be happy for him instead of making everything about yourself." That was the moment something inside me went completely still. I didn't argue and didn't explain. I just nodded once and walked away. Later that night, when we got home, Lucas was in an especially good mood. He kept talking about how successful the launch was and how many important people had shown up. My parents listened to every word like it was gold. I went straight to my room. The next morning, I woke up early and updated my resume. I applied to 12 different positions that same day, most of them outside Phoenix. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Over the next few weeks, something shifted in me. I stopped waiting for my parents to notice me. I stopped hoping Lucas would one day appreciate everything I did for the family. I started focusing only on myself. I went on several interviews. Most of them didn't work out, but I kept going. I started saving every extra dollar I could. I even opened a separate bank account that no one in my family knew about. My mother noticed the change. One evening, while I was cooking dinner, she came into the kitchen and leaned against the counter. "You've been very distant lately," she said. "You barely talk to us anymore. Is this still about that interview?" I didn't look up from the stove. "I'm just busy," I replied. She was quiet for a moment. "You know, Lucas said he might need help with his app. Maybe you can assist him with some of the paperwork or marketing. It would be good for you to support your brother." I turned off the stove and looked at her. "No." She blinked, surprised. "No?" I'm not going to work for Lucas, I said calmly. I have my own life. I'm not going to keep putting everything on hold for him. My mother's face tightened. You're being selfish again, Isabella. Family helps each other. I wiped my hands on a towel and looked her straight in the eye. Funny, because when it was my turn to need help, none of you showed up. She didn't have anything to say after that. 2 months later, I got a job offer. It wasn't in Phoenix. It was in Denver, Colorado, a project coordinator role at a mid-sized logistics company. The salary was decent, and more importantly, it was far away from my family. When I told my parents I was moving, my mother looked genuinely shocked. You're leaving? She asked. Just like that? Yes, I said. I already accepted the offer. I'm moving in 3 weeks. My father frowned. What about Lucas? He might need you here. His business is still growing. I almost laughed. Lucas has both of you. He doesn't need me. My mother tried one last time. Isabella, you're making a mistake. Family should stay together. You're being too emotional about this. I picked up my car keys from the table. No, Mom, I said quietly. I'm finally being honest. Then I walked out of the house. As I drove away that night, I didn't feel sad, I didn't feel guilty. For the first time in years, I felt something close to hope. I didn't know it yet, but that decision to leave Phoenix would eventually lead me to something I never expected. A future where my brother would one day have to report directly to me. The first few months in Denver were harder than I expected. I had never lived alone in a new city before. Everything felt unfamiliar, the streets, the weather, even the way people spoke. My apartment was small and the rent was higher than I had budgeted for. Some nights I sat on the floor eating takeout because I didn't have the energy to cook. But I didn't regret leaving Phoenix. For the first time in my life, I wasn't answering to anyone. I didn't have to explain where I was going or why I was coming home late. I didn't have to listen to my mother talk about Lucas's big ideas or watch my father nod along like everything he did was brilliant. I started working at Logan Logistics as a project coordinator. The pay wasn't amazing, but the work was steady. I kept my head down, stayed late when needed, and slowly started proving myself. Within 8 months, I was promoted to project lead. A year after that, I became a team supervisor. I didn't tell my family about any of it. My mother called me every few weeks at first. She would ask how I was doing, but the conversation always circled back to Lucas. She would tell me how his app was getting traction or how he was networking with important people. I would listen quietly, give short answers, and end the call as soon as I could. After a while, the calls became less frequent. I think they realized I wasn't coming back. By my 3rd year in Denver, I had been promoted again, this time to operations manager. I was managing a team of 12 people and handling bigger projects. My salary had almost doubled from what I was making in Phoenix. I finally bought a decent car and moved into a slightly bigger apartment. For the first time, I felt like I was building something that belonged to me. My parents still called on birthdays and holidays, but the conversations were surface level. They never asked about my job in detail. They never asked if I was happy. Most of the time, they just updated me about Lucas. One Christmas, my mother mentioned that Lucas's startup had failed. He had run out of money and shut it down. She said it casually, like it was just a small setback. He's taking some time to figure things out, she said. He might come stay with us for a while. I didn't respond. Part of me felt sorry for him. Another part of me felt nothing at all. By my 5th year in Denver, I had been promoted to director of operations. I was now overseeing multiple teams and reporting directly to the VP. I had built a reputation for being calm under pressure and getting results. People in the company respected me. I had also started therapy. It helped me understand how much I had been carrying for years. The guilt, the resentment,
and the belief that I had to earn my place in my own family. One evening, after a long day, I received a call from my father. It had been almost 4 months since we last spoke. "Isabella, your mother and I need to talk to you about something." I sat down on the couch. "What is it?" There was a short pause. "Lucas has been struggling," he said. "After his startup failed, he's had a hard time finding stable work. He's been jumping between jobs. Your mother thinks maybe you could help him." I stayed quiet. "He's thinking about moving to Denver," my father continued. "He heard the job market is better there. We were hoping you could maybe help him get on his feet. Maybe even put in a good word for him at your company." I felt something cold settle in my chest. They hadn't called to ask how I was doing. They called because they wanted something. "Dad," I said slowly, "I haven't spoken to Lucas in years, and I'm not going to use my position at work to get him a job. He's your brother, Isabella. Family helps family. You've done well for yourself out there. The least you can do is help him get started." I closed my eyes. For years, they had made me sacrifice my own opportunities for Lucas. And now, after everything, they still expected me to do it again. "I'm not doing that," I said quietly. "If Lucas wants to move to Denver, that's his choice. But I'm not getting involved." My father was silent for a few seconds. "You've changed," he finally said. "You used to care about this family." "I still care, but I'm done sacrificing myself for it." I ended the call shortly after. I sat on the couch for a long time afterward, staring at the wall. Part of me felt guilty. Another part of me felt free. I had spent so many years being the daughter who said yes. The one who showed up, who sacrificed, who stayed quiet. I wasn't that person anymore, and I had no intention of going back. What I didn't know at the time was that Lucas would eventually come to Denver anyway. And when he did, our paths would cross in a way neither of us could have predicted. I didn't hear from my parents for almost 2 months after that phone call. At first, I kept expecting my mother to call again, maybe with a softer tone or some guilt tripping, but the silence stretched on. Part of me was relieved. Another part of me felt strangely unsettled, like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then one afternoon in early spring, I received a message from my cousin Sophia. "Hey, just wanted to let you know. Lucas moved to Denver last week. He's staying with some friend for now. I thought you should know." I stared at the message for a long time. He was here, in the same city as me. I didn't reply to Sophia right away. Instead, I sat at my desk and tried to process how I felt. Angry? Anxious? Indifferent? I wasn't sure. All I knew was that the careful distance I had built over the past 5 years suddenly felt smaller. 2 weeks later, I got another message, this time from my mother. "Lucas is in Denver now. He's been applying to jobs, but it's been difficult. I know you said you didn't want to get involved, but maybe you could at least check if there are any openings at your company. Just something entry level. He's trying, Isabella." I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded it to my therapist. We had been working on boundaries for months, and this felt like another test. She replied simply, "You already gave your answer. You don't owe them another one." I took her advice and stayed silent. For the next month, I heard nothing. I started to think maybe Lucas had found something else, or perhaps he had given up and gone back to Phoenix. Either way, I told myself it wasn't my problem. Then one Tuesday morning, something happened. I was in the weekly operations meeting when our HR business partner, Rachel, mentioned that they were hiring for a new operations analyst role. It was an entry-level position that reported to one of the team leads under my department. "We've received quite a few applications," Rachel said, scrolling through her tablet. "But there's one candidate who stands out. He doesn't have much direct experience, but his resume's interesting. Name's Lucas Torres." I felt my stomach drop. I kept my face neutral and asked, "Can you send me his resume after the meeting?" Rachel nodded. Later that afternoon, she forwarded it. I opened the file with a strange feeling in my chest. It was him. Lucas had applied to my company, and not just anywhere. He had applied to a role that would ultimately report into my department. I read through his resume slowly. It was padded. He had exaggerated his startup experience and listed responsibilities I knew he never actually handled. He had also used our mother's maiden name on the application instead of Torres, probably hoping it would help him stand out less. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. For a moment, I considered pretending I didn't know him. I could approve the application, let the process continue normally, and stay out of it completely. That would be the easiest option. But then I remembered the day he smirked while I was forced to miss my interview. I remembered how my parents had dismissed my future for his big moment. I remembered every time they had chosen him over me without hesitation. This wasn't just any candidate. This was the same brother who had benefited from years of favoritism while I was expected to sacrifice. I closed the resume and picked up my phone. I called Rachel in HR. "Hey, Rachel," I said, keeping my voice professional. "I looked at the operations analyst applications. There's one from Lucas Torres. I need to flag something." "Sure, what's up?" I took a breath. Lucas Torres is my younger brother. We're not close, and I haven't spoken to him in years, but I wanted to disclose it before anything moves forward. I don't want any conflict of interest. There was a short pause on the other end. "Oh," Rachel said. "Thanks for letting me know. Do you want us to remove him from the process?" I was quiet for a moment. Part of me wanted to say yes. It would be clean, simple. I could protect myself from any drama. But another part of me, the colder, more calculated part, saw an opportunity. "No," I said finally. "Don't remove him. Let the process continue normally. I'll stay completely out of the hiring decision, but I wanted full transparency." Rachel sounded relieved. "Got it. Thanks for being upfront, Isabella. We'll document it and keep you out of the loop on this one." After the call ended, I sat at my desk for a long time, staring out the window. Lucas had no idea I worked here. He had applied thinking this was just another random company. He probably assumed he would get the job based on charm and whatever lies he put on his resume. But what he didn't know was that the person he would eventually report to was me. I didn't feel happy about it. I didn't feel excited. But for the first time since he moved to Denver, I felt something close to control. Because whether he got the job or not, one thing was now certain. If Lucas wanted to build a life in this city, he was going to have to do it while knowing that his older sister, the one they always made sacrifice for, was now in a position of power over him. And I had no intention of making it easy. I tried not to think about Lucas for the next 2 weeks. I told myself that I had done the right thing by disclosing the relationship to HR. I had removed myself from the hiring process. Whatever happened next was out of my hands. If he got the job, fine. If he didn't, that was also fine. I had no intention of interfering either way. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. Every morning when I walked into the office, a small part of me wondered if today would be the day I saw his name on the new hire list. I hated that I was even thinking about him this much. I had spent years building a life where he didn't exist, and now he was suddenly close again, not emotionally, but professionally. On a Thursday afternoon, Rachel, from HR, knocked on my office door. "Isabella, do you have a minute?" I gestured for her to come in. She closed the door behind her and sat down. "I wanted to update you about the operations analyst role. Lucas Torres accepted the offer yesterday. He starts next Monday." I kept my expression neutral. "Understood," I said. "Thanks for letting me know." Rachel hesitated for a second. "We've already documented everything. You won't be involved in his onboarding, performance reviews, or any decisions related to him. He'll report to Daniel in the operations team." I nodded.
"That's fine. I appreciate you handling it this way." After she left, I sat back in my chair and stared at the wall for a long time. He was actually coming here. My younger brother, the same person my parents had always prioritized over me, was about to work in my company. And even though he wouldn't be reporting directly to me, he would still be under my department. That meant I would see him in meetings. I would see his name in reports. I would have some level of indirect authority over his role. I didn't know how to feel about that. On Monday morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. I told myself it was just a coincidence, but the truth was I wanted to see him before he saw me. I wanted to observe him without him knowing I was watching. Around 9:15 a.m., I saw him. He was walking through the main hallway with Rachel, wearing a navy blue shirt and carrying a laptop bag. He looked older than I remembered. His hair was shorter, and he had gained some weight. He was smiling and nodding as Rachel explained something to him. He looked normal, like any other new employee on their first day. For a brief second, I felt something close to sadness. This was still my little brother, the same boy I used to help with homework when we were kids. But that feeling didn't last long, because right after it came the memory of him smirking while I was forced to miss my interview. The memory of my parents telling me his event was more important than my future. I turned around and walked back to my office before he could see me. For the next few days, I avoided the operations floor as much as possible. I asked my assistant to handle anything that required me to go downstairs. I even skipped one of the weekly team meetings, just so I wouldn't have to be in the same room as him. But I couldn't avoid him forever. On Thursday of that same week, I had to attend a cross-departmental meeting about a new client project. Daniel, Lucas's direct manager, was also in the meeting. And so was Lucas. I walked into the conference room 5 minutes early. Most people were already seated. Lucas was sitting near the middle of the table, looking at his laptop. He didn't notice me at first. I took my usual seat at the head of the table. A few seconds later, he looked up. Our eyes met. For a moment, he looked confused, like he was trying to place where he knew me from. Then, recognition hit him. His eyes widened slightly, and his mouth opened a little. I kept my face completely calm. "Isabella?" he said, loud enough for a few people to hear. "What are you doing here?" The room went quiet. I looked at him directly and answered in a professional tone. "I work here, Lucas. I'm the director of operations." He stared at me like I had just spoken in another language. You're the director?" "Yes," I replied simply. "Daniel reports to me, which means, indirectly, you report to me as well." A few people in the room exchanged glances. The tension was obvious. Lucas let out a short, awkward laugh. "Wow, that's crazy. I had no idea." I didn't smile. "Well, now you do." The rest of the meeting was uncomfortable. Lucas kept glancing at me every few minutes, clearly struggling to process what had just happened. I stayed focused on the discussion and didn't look at him again.
After the meeting ended, I was packing up my laptop when he approached me. "Isabella, can we talk for a second?" he asked quietly. I looked at him. "Not here," I said, "and not during work hours. If you need to discuss something work-related, you should go through Daniel." He looked taken aback. I didn't know you worked here. Mom and Dad never mentioned it." "They don't know the details of my job," I replied, "and I'd prefer to keep it that way." Lucas shifted on his feet. "Look, I know things were weird between us back home, but I'm just trying to start fresh here. I didn't come here to cause problems." I studied him for a moment. "Then don't," I said calmly. "Do your job, stay professional, and we won't have any issues." I picked up my laptop and walked out of the conference room, leaving him standing there. As I walked back to my office, my heart was beating faster than usual. This was really happening. My brother was now working under me, and for the first time in years, the power dynamic between us had completely flipped. For the next few weeks, I kept my distance from Lucas as much as professionally possible. I instructed Daniel to handle all matters related to him directly. I made it clear that I didn't want to be involved in his performance reviews, task assignments, or any day-to-day decisions. On paper, everything looked clean and professional, but inside the office, the tension was impossible to ignore. Lucas, on the other hand, seemed determined to act like nothing had changed. He would smile at me in the hallway and say, "Hey sis," loud enough for others to hear. He tried to joke with me during team meetings. Once, he even came to my office door holding 2 coffees, acting like we were just normal siblings catching up. I shut that down immediately. "Lucas," I said calmly, "we're at work. If you need something, go through Daniel. And please don't call me sis here." He looked offended, like I was the one being difficult. "I'm just trying to be friendly. You're acting like I did something wrong." I stared at him for a second. "You showed up at my company without telling me. You used a different last name on your application, and now you're trying to act like we're close? We're not. So let's keep this professional." He didn't like that answer. After that conversation, something shifted. Lucas stopped being friendly. Instead, he became careless. He started showing up late to meetings. He missed deadlines. He made small mistakes that Daniel had to clean up. It felt like he was testing how much he could get away with, probably because he assumed I would eventually protect him. He was wrong. One Friday afternoon, Daniel came to my office looking stressed. "Isabella, we have a problem," he said. "Lucas was supposed to submit the client report for the Henderson account by yesterday. He didn't. When I followed up, he said he was handling it, but the client just called me asking where it is. They're not happy." I stayed calm. "Did he give any reason?" Daniel hesitated. "He said he had some personal stuff going on and figured someone else would cover for him. He also mentioned that since you're his sister, maybe things could be handled more flexibly." I felt a flicker of anger, but I kept my face neutral. "Send me the details, and from now on, I want every issue with Lucas documented. No exceptions." That evening, I stayed late and reviewed Lucas's work for the past month. It was sloppy. He had been relying on other team members to fix his mistakes. He was clearly underperforming, and now he was trying to use our family connection as an excuse. I made a decision. On Monday morning, I called Daniel into my office. "I want Lucas put on a formal performance improvement plan," I said. "Effective immediately. I'll review it myself before it goes out." Daniel looked surprised, but didn't argue. "Are you sure?" he asked carefully. "People might talk if they find out you're the one pushing it." "I'm sure," I replied. "He's been given enough chances. If he can't meet the basic expectations of the role, then he shouldn't be here. The PIP was sent to Lucas 2 days later. When he received it, he didn't come to my office. Instead, he went straight to HR and tried to complain that I was targeting him because of our family issues. Rachel from HR called me afterward. "He's claiming this is personal," she said. "He said you're punishing him because of things that happened back home." I was ready for this. "I disclosed our relationship from day one," I said calmly. "Every decision I've made regarding him has been documented. If he wants to escalate this, I'm happy to sit down with HR and go through the records." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Understood. We'll handle it from here." Lucas's behavior only got worse after that. He became resentful and sloppy. He started making comments to other team members about how unfair things were. 2 people on his team even came to Daniel complaining about his attitude. Then came the final incident. Lucas missed another critical deadline, this time for a presentation that was supposed to go to one of our biggest clients. When Daniel confronted him, Lucas blamed another team member and refused to take responsibility. That was the last straw. I called Lucas into a meeting with Daniel and HR present. He sat across from me with his arms crossed, looking defensive. "Lucas," I said, keeping my voice professional, "your performance has not improved despite being placed on a PIP. You've missed multiple deadlines, shown poor accountability, and created tension within the team. At this point, we have no choice but to let you go." He stared at me like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You're firing me?" he asked, his voice rising. "Your own brother?" I looked him directly in the eyes. "I'm terminating an employee who has repeatedly failed to meet the expectations of their role. The fact that we share the same last name doesn't change that." Lucas stood up, his face red. "Mom and Dad were right about you. You've always been selfish. You think you're better than everyone now just because you got some fancy title." I stayed calm. "You can think whatever you want, but this meeting is over." He stormed out of the room. 2 days later, he was officially terminated. I didn't feel triumphant when it happened. I didn't feel happy. If anything, I felt strangely empty. But I also felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Because for the first time in my life, I had chosen myself without guilt. A week after Lucas was fired, my mother called me. It was the first time she had called in months. "Isabella," she said, her voice tight, "how could you do this to your own brother? He told us you fired him out of spite. After everything we've been through as a family, you do this?" I took a slow breath. "Mom, Lucas was fired because he wasn't doing his job. I gave him multiple chances. He chose not to take them seriously." "You could have helped him," she snapped. "You could have protected him, but you chose to humiliate him instead." I felt something settle inside me. "No," I said quietly. "I chose not to destroy my own career and reputation to protect someone who never once protected me. That's the difference between us." She was silent for a few seconds. "You've become cold, Isabella," she finally said. "I don't even recognize you anymore." "Maybe," I replied, "but at least now I recognize myself." I ended the call. I haven't spoken to my mother or Lucas since that day. It's been 8 months. I still work at the same company. I've been promoted again since then. My life is quiet, stable, and mine. Some days I think about my family. Most days I don't. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting your own future, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. You know, after everything that happened, I've learned something important. Sometimes the people who always told you that family comes first
only meant it when it benefited them. They never expected you to finally put yourself first. I spent years sacrificing my opportunities, my time, and my peace for a family that never chose me back. But the moment I stopped waiting for their approval was the moment I actually started living. I don't hate them, I just finally understand that I don't owe them anything anymore. And that realization has been the greatest freedom I've ever given myself.